Hello YouTube, this is Black Thought, where I ramble podcast style about a Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia topic. The topic for today is the content for the month of April 2021. I will be doing an overview with my perspective, having played this period in the Japanese version, highlighting some gotchas and outlining my pull plans. Before I continue, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, share this video around, and drop a comment about your plans for the month. Only about half of my viewers on average are subscribed. I play both JP and Global, and I upload daily content, so you're in for a treat if you hit the notification bell, subscribe to my channel as well. I'll be reading all the comments per usual, so don't be afraid to ask anything, and I'll usually chime in. Just go ahead. I also do monthly JP retrospectives, although at the moment I'm kind of behind on that. I'm behind on this as well. You'll be seeing a little bit of it out of order. But I do this after the month finishes-ish to give my initial takes. I'm gonna link that as well so y'all can see how I felt about the content after it was fresh, how my opinions have possibly evolved since then. Everything here is my opinion and impression, don't take it as fact. I screw up all the time and frequently synergy style content, lazy way out, path to least resistance, you know what it is. Always double check your sources, I am fallible. Always seek out different points of view and aim to understand them all and where they are coming from and whether or not they are credible. Opening thoughts for this month, not really much. We got a lot of quality of life. 10 ticket pulls finally. Dear God. Auto Plus making divine farming a breeze. I'm already done with it. 10 ticket pulls save me time and let me put together more interesting content. Or in the case of this, I can get backlogged and then work on other stuff. But, you know, it's good for me and I enjoy it so much. So good for content creators. The only thing I think we're missing from JP that is not in global at this point is having a gold token exchange for artifacts. But I perfected all my artifacts, so I don't care at this point. And that's about it for my opening thoughts. And without further ado, let's jump right into the content for the month. Divine Ramuh. We first have the featured character, the 2-week synergy, the Emperor. He's getting quite a few things. First off, he's getting a rework. He gets 1 more skill 1 and it now hits harder, and he gets 2 more skill 2. The biggest thing, however, is that he has high turn rate on both of his skills. He can chain his traps more easily, either with pressing the skill again or chaining it with his Brave and HP plus from his LD passive that provide him the ability to trigger them when they're used. Also, he's getting LD boards. The LD attack now does a double HP attack. The frame buff that he is granted from the LD now is extended 4 turns, and it gets an additional attack up, so he's hitting harder. And the biggest thing is that he can't drop below 10% M Brave, which ups his consecutive damage. Because if you chain him up right, and he's doing LD or anything really, if he's he's triggering all his traps, he's getting a flat damage boost because his damage isn't going to drop below his max Brave, which is going to stay at that static level, which can definitely ramp up his output. His call ability is skill 1, it drops a trap as a frame debuff, and then it'll go off later. There's no actual effect here. And his LD call is the same as his LD. It's pocket delay, it drops the speed down from the skill 1 trap, and there's no caller effect. The delay, however, this is important, it is only on the targeted enemy. It's single target delay, not AoE delay. His burst is a big flashy 100% AoE attack. It applies a frame trap debuff, so be careful with your debuff slots if you're using this burst. In the trap, ignores defense, it's 100% AoE, and it delays all targets, which is pretty sick. The actual burst effect, however, is for the party. You get Brave damage up plus 30. You also get additional Brave damage up to debuff targets plus 20. So you're always going to have debuffs active Emperors on the team. So it's pretty much a 50% Brave damage up to the party, which is pretty much Paladin Cecil's LD overhead. The Brave damage cap gets upped, and everyone in the party gets a refund of 20% of the HP damage done per turn if they're attacking a debuff target, which again is always. So pretty good stuff. His high armor is debuff, 20% defense down stacks next with his 3 traps, which decrease defense by 10% each. So that's a potential 50% defense down just by having Emperor in the party and having all his 3 traps active at once, which is very nice. Next, we have Celis. I hope I'm saying her name right. If I'm not, deal with it. She's getting a rework, but her rework is pretty fat. She gets 2 more skill 1, and she now, with her skill 1, heals the party based on damage dealt and applies an Ice Imperil. Her skill 2 has an extra Brave hit, and her Magic Absorb frame buff got a big buff. Now it lowers physical Brave damage to Celes. It grants a Ice Enchant Aura to the party. It provides party HP damage reduction, and on top of already giving allies a huge Magic Brave damage resist, her target lock is also AoE now, so she doesn't have to worry about taunting them both or relying on her C65, so you can just keep going. Her HP plus, which you probably won't be using much, but gotta know it anyways, it has 2 hits and it batteries the party based on damage done. Her LD is this really cool looking ice attack. It has 4 uses. It gives the party an additional 30% attack aura, and Celeste gets a big attack boost for herself as well. She has her magic absorb buff star, which is nice, and she's got a double AoE split attack that heals the party and batteries the party based on damage done. And it applies Ice Imperil, which is generic, target lock, which obviously Celeste needs, and her new trap debuff. This trap batteries Celeste before the attack. It's a 3-hit magic brave plus HP, and it heals and batteries the party based on damage dealt. This is a ton. She is a consistent ice aura enchanter now. I think I said that right. Her call ability already existed. It's AoE runic, and the caller absorbs magic brave damage, which is situationally good, I guess. And her LD call is also the same as her LD. It's pocket. She drops all 3 debuffs: Ice Imperil, Taunt, and the trap. The trap won't be as strong since Celeste is in the party, but it is there to take up a debuff slot. Something important to note is that her trap does not imperil ice. She separates them, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. Because one, she can work fine in imperil immune fights, but at the same time, it's easier to push that imperil off. Her high armor is Unity, which lets the party go beyond the Brave cap. I don't think she'll be breaking the cap often, but her teammates might. So you can live without it, but you plan on running her a lot. I'd say, and especially if you're running a lot of damage stacking in the team, definitely pick that high armor up. I don't think I will. There's some other calls that we're getting here. Yuffie, in her 80s, she gets a 2-buff dispel with her skill 1. Lulu is doing her skill where she gives frame fire enchant buff to the party. It's not an effect. She drops the actual fire enchant buff on you. Selfie is getting a wall, and she provides wall and Ibrio to the party. And if you have her purple, she provides aura buff start, which could potentially be useful. I don't know how useful a pocket 3-turn aura is, but I mean, some galaxy brain will figure something out. And Aiko is getting pocket attack, Embrave, and HP regen up. And the important thing with Echo is that she can now, and God, someone's going to get me because I'm probably going to say her name wrong, but she can also pocket extend buffs. So now we have Hope, Saz, and Aiko who can extend buffs just as calls, which can be very handy for specific units. Now on to what I think. What do I think? Emperor, man, he's way more fluid now with the high turn rate. His damage is buffed substantially with that consecutive stuff since he doesn't drop below 10% of his Embrave, and his burst effect is really good as well, especially for him to just amp his damage up, and he actually finally decided to do something for the party as well. There's a setup cost to using him, unfortunately, in the form of 3 debuff slots, and you have to be even more careful with his burst to make sure the 4th debuff is actually applied, because that's additional damage. He's extremely powerful, and having a pocket delay LD call with good damage is always nice. Stack damage and effects with him, and his damage potential is very high. He's always been like that. You know, just don't slap him on whatever team and say, oh, his traps aren't doing enough damage. Buff the traps, and then you just see the fireworks, and he just destroys content. He'll be good for months on end. Celeste, she is a monster. She went from a niche tank to the first permanent ice enchant aura. On top of that, she brings crazy utility, HP damage resist for the party so you take less damage. I hate making comparisons, but she's seriously stepping on guys' toes hardcore here. Her personal damage still isn't stellar, but it's buffed in the off-turn stuff, which is great. She doesn't have much attack aura, but the Imperial does help boost the party's damage. She takes up 2 frame debuff slots, lock and trap, and 1 generic ice Imperial. That is important to have, or else some of her big benefits aren't being taken advantage of. So I can get dicey as all 3 are important. I think she's overall one of the best units this month, and I definitely recommend everybody to pick her up. Am I pulling? Well, I have Emperor's LD already, so I'm skipping that banner. His burst is nice, but I'm not chasing. I really want Celeste, 1 for the farm. Great farmer, great, especially because we got Auto Plus now. And I think she's one of the best units this month again. And she helped me through tons of content months on end. I think everyone should pick her up personally. I'm going to throw tons of tickets at her banner. I really want her to come home. Shout out to Final Fantasy VI fans, because y'all are about to eat with her. She in the Terra next month, man, she's stellar. Now talking about the fight, oh man. The orb is +5 when the target is delayed. It is Ice Weak and is Thunder and Earth Absorb. It is immune to generic Paralyze, HP Silence, Attack Down, Defense Down, and Terror, which is Eald'Narche's buff. The strategy most will take, I assume, and rightfully so. Why bash your head against the fight? Don't let Ramuh get a turn. Combinations of Leo, Garland, Cloud, Emperor, Ramza, it's just the layers in general. You can never see the boss mechanics. Never let this guy get turned. They're encouraging it, so I don't blame anyone for going down that road. Get your W by any means necessary. If you let the boss get turns, however, there's some rough gimmicks. The recast is super nasty. It absorbs Brave and HP damage reductions. It does a Brave gain into AoE Brave plus HP, and the worst of all is that it buffs itself during the recast, just during the recast. And these are with framed buffs. It gives itself attack up, HP damage up, Brave damage up, and Brave gain up in that order. So if you don't block it with frames, you're probably going bye-bye, especially if the HP damage up is there. Maybe you can survive it if you have triple last stand, but you can't HP reduce it. So yeah, it's not gonna be pretty. So the idea is to have Emperor's 3 traps up and Serah's trap and lock ups, and that's 5 framed debuffs. And so the only buff Ramuh will get will be the attack up, and so you can live through the recast. However, after the recast, Ramuh summons the crystals. When the crystals are up, Ramuh becomes launch immune and gets huge brave damage reduction. The crystals, as units on their own, they reduce non-elemental brave damage by 90%. So if you're not hitting weakness damage on them, you're not going to be doing much actual damage to them. They have frame turns, but they can be delayed by break, and their attacks ignore reductions again, and they turn swap with Ramuh right after they go. So say C goes, and then he'll yoink Ramuh right forward, it'll be A, and then you'll get hit again, and you can get stuck in a really nasty loop and get blown up if you're not careful with Serah's eating the damage or just doing massive AoEs to get those ads out of there. You want to get them down as soon as possible. Other than that, again, I predict most will just go with the delay strategy and not see the fight. So it is what it is. But if you want to challenge yourself and get around the boss, it's pretty nasty, so that's a heads up. Aerith LD banner. Let me get started here. Aerith is an interesting character, at least a character release, because they released her on a banner, and it was with all the other weapons in the game as off banners, but the increase in rates was for all of Aerith's stuff, and then they got the Emperor burst on the banner as well. That's something to think about. But the actual character, she's getting an LD, obviously. It's a double HP attack with battery on the first part, AoE brave hits on the second one, and it has splash damage to other targets. You get 6 turns of a new buff, which is Seal Evil. The party becomes debuff immune outside of guaranteed debuffs, obviously. And you get a debuff aura. It's 20% attack and speed down, which is already nice. I love me some speed down. And defense down for 60%, which is huge. She's also getting a follow-up after she attacks a target, and this is actually attacking a target, not one of her skills. So Brave plus, HP plus, EX, and it reduces the enemy Brave X death style based on her attack and batteries the party for the same value, and it does HP damage with whatever's left, and it doesn't deplete the Brave as well. Kind of like a Penelo's EX, sort of. It gives her a great safety net after she does her attacks. Everything's safe because she has a hard time getting broken because of the Brave gain. The follow-up also extends her own buff, so she doesn't need to refresh via skills. So her skill 1 and skill 2 are kind of niche usefulness now. You don't really want to press those buttons unless you really, really need to. The follow-up also does a debuff. It's called Planet's Punishment, and it does HP damage up plus 10%. The boss cannot buff itself, which is great versus Ramuh, Divine Ramuh, and on its recast, and Eald'Narche's Lost Chapter, where she conveniently it features a synergy. Wow, what a dunk. On top of all that, her limit breaks give her plus 30 to attack and M Brave as an aura to the party, which makes her auras competitive again. Woo! I think it bumps her attack up to 90. Yeah, that sounds right. She has the support high armor, which is pretty whack since she does a lot of battery. Would have loved to have be able to abuse Paladin Cecil's RF Sphere, but sadly she just gets a plus 5 to attack and then HP cap up for everyone in the party, which I think is a little bit more reasonable for her because she batteries so much, and because she has HP damage up, people have an easier time hitting the cap. Her call ability is actually extremely powerful in the right situations. It's a plus 80 attack up alongside a plus 40% magic attack up, and you get brave regen on top of that. So like, it's really, really good on X Death. Her LD call is no effect, it's just an attack, and it does not follow up, nor does it imply the debuff from her follow-up. What do I think? Well, Aerith is fantastic. I think she's getting a little undervalued right now because her power on paper doesn't sound too great, but those aura debuffs alongside her additional damage make her super valuable in the team. Defense down 60% is huge. That's nearing like vanilla levels, alright? It's an insane amount of extra utility. It only takes up 1 debuff slot. She's got now debuff evasion, enemy buff prevention, gain install and overflow, burst heal, battery, HP damage up, competitive auras, and debuff auras on top of that. That's a loaded kit, and she fits so well to pretty much any team. She doesn't really care about magic resist or anything like that. She's not elemental. She can fit pretty much anywhere. She just provides insane value. It's kind of sad that you got to ignore her skills, but then again, those are usually emergency buttons. They didn't really need to make them free because if you play Aerith and once she has her LD, you kind of realize, and I had this take in the beginning, she felt clunky. But once I ignored her skills pretty much and only pressed them when I needed like a burst heal, and her skill 2 is trash, so you ignore that generally anyways. You don't need to refresh it now that she has LD. I'm a big fan personally. Am I pulling? Of course. Final Fantasy VII is love. Final Fantasy VII is life. My favorite game. I got a ton of use out of Aerith and JP. Those auras are god tier. Defense down 60%, just being there. along with the other goodies, is just amazing. I love using Aerith. She fits so well in pretty much any team. I love me some gained overflow auras. Speed down and attack down too. She's going to be a good pair with Vincent just because of that one frame debuff. And she won't be letting bosses buff themselves, so Vincent won't get his stuff pushed off. And then the debuff stacking with those two should be incredible. Oh my god, I love it. She's a godsend for Ramuh if you're having trouble with the recast, as she just doesn't let him buff. She can fit pretty much anywhere, and I think she's a solid grab for anyone. She's also, again, on a weird banner, which could be potentially beneficial if you're trying to collect other stuff, but I don't think the G tokens on that banner can get you any weapon, so that's something to be aware of. And there's no fight tied to Aerith, like I said. There was no fight or event for her in JP. So maybe Global will pull some unique content out there, but there's no telling. I don't even know when the banner's going to be, but I'm just putting this out there just so I can talk about it. Running her back in Divine Ramuh for the farm and the Lufenia should make it a ton easier. And yeah, I think it's a humongous mistake to skip her and grab her on the Tidus banner. One, because it's not guaranteed you'll get them both. You could easily go to 300 G tokens and not get either LD. But two, Aerith is kind of falling out of favor by that point. That's like, what, like 4 months down the road? We have way stronger aura bots and supports and damage and all that. So Aerith has limited utility then. I mean, if you really want to get the best use out of her, this is her time to shine. So get her now, all right? Eald'Narche's lost chapter. Eald'Narche is not getting a rework, but he is coming back in an adjusted state. Originally in JP, he released on his lost chapter, and then he got adjusted. His LD boards got reworked, which I think was the first to ever happen. He had an LD board rework when his burst dropped, and he's receiving that LD board rework early, and it's got some interesting details. Don't worry about what the rest was, just I'll explain it to you how it is now, all right? First off, his LD has 3 uses. He busts out the crayons and does alternating brave hits. He HP attacks and does AoE brave plus HP twice more. He gets a new debuff for 8 turns. Hooray for more debuffs. It's defense down 30 and an additional 20% Embrave sap. It also applies the warp debuff, the debuff that lets Eald'Narche act after enemy turns from his skill 2, which also includes a defense down of 30%. And now whenever he applies a debuff to the enemies, he gets a new buff called Exceed Lance, and it gives him more overflow, brave regen, and brave damage up per debuff, which is pretty nice for his brave damage. His call ability is his skill 2, and it drops a 40% defense down, and its effective caller is a nice 40% attack slash embrave, which is alright. And his LD call drops his LD debuff, the 30% defense down plus Embrave sap. His high armor is debuff armor, which is always helpful. If you're planning on using him frequently, definitely grab it. It stacks nicely with his other debuffs. What do I think about Eald'Narche? Well, the defense down in total is 120% if you invest in him fully, which is 40% generic from his skill 2 plus 20% from his armor. His LD debuff has 30% and warp has 30%. So that's pretty good. That's a contribution to the party. He's better at what he did before, ideally, which should happen when you get an LD. Looking at you, Serah, and he locks bosses out. He's better doing that. Sap is better for enemy brave control and defense down from his new debuff, and his high armor helps him and the party hit harder. I think it's best to skip his first phase and go straight to the floating mode plus LD now. I'm not sure the best practices with him, so look around for other suggestions. And he can straight up break fights. There's only 2 future fights that are Terra immune, Nine's lost chapter and Kadaj's event, and that's back to back. Sadly, and I think many others agree with me, he's probably the most boring character in the game, regardless of how effective he can be. It's just the annoying HP plus spam, oh my god. And the I hate shutout runs where the bosses don't do anything at all. I just find it incredibly boring if he's just sitting there going, ha! Depending on the orb, he can be a nuisance, taking down the orb when he takes turns. It's not a huge deal necessarily because it's usually possible to compensate with good team, but still, it can be really annoying. I think the character himself is really cool, but he personally is not fun at all, and he is a burst candidate in the future, so I'm sorry, Kalmanot. That being said, am I pulling? Yeah. He's a future burst candidate on a single LD banner. I can get challenge quest mileage out of him, and I'd hate to get his burst and not have his LD. I'm not petty enough to sell a burst, especially with BT plus being a thing. That's dumb. Anyone selling burst plus, what are you doing? Anyways, I'm interested in Noel and that same cycle because Noel is getting his LD and rework on the other banner. It's Eald'Narche on one and Eald'Narche burst on one, both bursts on each banner, and then Noel LD on the other. And his future banner sucks. It's a split between Garnet and Twins on this banner and Irvine and Sid on the next banner with Eald'Narche burst featured, who I already don't care about. I'd much rather have a chance at Emperor's burst, and I'm never going to use Eald'Narche's burst anyway, so blech. I'm going to use Eald'Narche for challenges, and that's it. Tickets, hopefully I don't get robbed by this goofball. It just be like that. I pull for burst candidates on a better banner when I can, and I have the resources now, so why not pull challenges at least. As for the fight, this fight is really just stupid. It made me bust at the lightning button in JP. It's wholly in dark absorb, so I'm sorry, Cecil and Theodore. You gotta be on the bench for a little bit. Maybe someone insane will get them through. I know, whatever. It's paralyzed immune, and the boss goes nuts if you taunt it, so don't do that. When it goes below a 90%, it locks your turn. It locks its turn, and it'll pop you with a big attack. And when the ads are up, it can't be delayed, but it can be break delayed. You can mitigate anything dangerous with HP silence or non-generic paralyze. And at thresholds, this guy buffs and he gets really tanky with high defense. And the idea is to block his buffs via Aerith or other frame buffs and use heavy defense down, which Eald'Narche provides. I think there's a cheese strat with Ramuh where if you keep the frame Ramuh paralyzed up, the ads won't come back and it doesn't buff itself. I'm not quite sure about that, but I remember that being close to being a thing. No boss turns / as few boss turns as possible is the best strategy here, followed by locking it out with silences, be Arciela or Arciela is the only one I can think of actually. And it's a good idea to hit the lightning button here just because of the break delays and the consecutive turns and the high turn rate. You don't want this guy acting too much. A popular strat was to just let lightning go ham, burst stack, lock him out, and then just smack him. Who am I running? My current theory craft for that is running Vincent, Aerith, and Lightning. Vincent and Aerith will give fat defense down. Vincent will neuter the boss in the beginning, and then he'll get swapped out for a burst unit, and then we'll just go nuts with Aerith and Lightning, because I do have Lightning's burst now, so I can't abuse that. And yeah, we'll see how that goes if it plays out at all. Aranea's character event, round 2 for global. She's back again as a character event, not a lost chapter. She's getting an LD. If you didn't have her before, if you started after she came as a global first, you have the opportunity to pick her up now in her full glory, plus more. Well, now I guess her LD is her full glory. But anyways, she's getting an LD. She's got 4 uses on said LD. It's a double split HP attack with refund in between, and you get a free skill after use, and it grants overclock to her to turn her skills into the plus versions. She gets a new overhead as well. And as long as his overhead is up, every attack she does is a re-break. It's got some eye brave up too, but that's not very significant. She's got a new brave plus HP you probably won't see very often, but it can be used to proc overclock, so it's decent to fall back on. Her call ability is her skill 2. You drop 2 turns of the Vital Crusher debuff, which is 50% crit damage up, single target. And her LD call is just damage, no debuffs. Her high armor is offense. She's a cap breaker. If you plan to run her a ton, grab this. It's essential for a damage deal, especially one like Aranea, who is all about doing crit damage and hitting hard. Her kit is unchanged from when she released as a global first EX plus unit, so that's cool. She's all about getting a consecutive turn on a break, and now that she has those re-breaks, she can proc it more consistently. She's got delays, she's got re-breaks, she's got all that good stuff, and tons of AoE damage. What do I think about her? Her overhead's cool. It ups her longevity, definitely, especially with that free skill. I didn't have her LD in JP, but those I've spoken to have said she tends to burn through skills pretty quickly, and or her buffs, which can get pretty annoying, just the upkeep factor of it. She's definitely better at denying enemy turns now due to guaranteed re-breaks when the enemy's broken, and she definitely excels in boss rush and no boss turn rushes, no boss turn runs. I guess I don't know how to say that. Just because of the re-breaks, and she can spam without hesitation and get swapped out. Because she doesn't provide anything, provides her good debuff. Let a BT friend put in the rest of the work, as she is selfish. She's got tons of known use, to my knowledge, as far as Edward's Lost Chapter, which is definitely a couple months out. She's definitely not the powerhouse she was in Chaos, though, but she definitely is a solid unit. Am I pulling? Probably not. I kind of soured on her kit from Chaos. Not really my style. I mean, she's amazing. She's hot too. Her gimmick is cool, and she is waifu, but I can't see myself running her often. I don't have Prompto's EX, and there's another shot at Emperor's Banner if I miss him going for Eald'Narche, so maybe. Not really seeing it. Probably gonna skip. Not really my thing. I think I'd rather just save. The only upgrade she gets with her Lost Chapter is High Armor Plus, so this is the time to use her. This is her prime. As for the fight, it absorbs every element except Thunder, and it is immune to generic Thunder and Peril. So it's pretty much either Reno if you're trying to hit weakness, Reno's Call, or Bust. It's Paralyzed immune as well, and the Orb is to deal crit damage, which is pretty easy to do. They become unbreakable after doing their stupid shield thing, and they don't drop below 1 unless they're hit with a crit first. Then you can break them afterwards. They charge up, and if they aren't broken, they cleanse. They attack you and dispel you, and you probably will die to this if you get hit. Otherwise, if broken, they'll still attack you, but it won't be as bad. Again, it's possible to no boss turn this and delay it to hell and back. They also have pretty low HP from what I've looked around and what I remember, so just keep them broken. It's possible to silence lock them down with Eald'Narche as well. He's featured, so that's the thing. Overall, not a horrible boss fight if you just know what you're doing, right? Who am I running? I'm thinking probably the Kais, Cryo, Cloud, Wombo combo with the Reno call so I can guarantee the weakness damage, or maybe I'll hit the lightning button. I'm not sure. Or maybe I'll run Squall too. There's a bunch of different teams, so I'm not really too decided on this, but when it gets here, y'all see it. You feel me? Next up, we got the Y'shtola Heretic. I think it's a beat bag. I never know what these events are called. Anyways, let me talk about Y'shtola. First off, she's getting a rework. Skill 1 has more hits, and it has a guaranteed HP attack. Skill 1 plus hits harder, and batteries party based on damage done. You're probably always going to have the plus version up anyways. Skill 2 gets 2 more uses. It heals party and does not add to the turn count. Her LD boards, and note, this is not her LD board rework she gets with Burst Plus. Don't expect this. It's not going to happen anyway. Her LD re-breaks enemies if they're already broken, and it's a 100% AoE attack that also batteries the party before the attack. She also gets a new overhead from her LD that goes with 3 stacks. She actually starts the quest with this LD overhead equipped, so you don't even need to use the LD to get it up. It's just always there. And the stacks increase after Y'shtola batteries herself, which is every button she presses, which also includes her C65. Consider that if you're trying to do some clutch turn manipulation. It gives her, actually no, it gives the party some attack. I think it's 20% only, which is pretty low, unfortunately. And she gets a new Brave attack. That also is an HP attack. At 0 to 2 stacks, it's a self battery into a split AoE, Brave plus HP with refund. So it's a kind of whack. And at 3 stacks, this is the good one. It's 3 times 2 AoE Brave plus HP attack. So a triple dump. It's very pretty, and it hits hard. Well, it doesn't necessarily hit hard, but it does a lot of damage, potentially. And her limit breaks give her a ton of attack and eye Brave. Her call abilities is her skill 1, not super impressive. It's a single target delay with party battery, no effect for the caller. And her LD call, again, no effect, just a re-break and AoE damage. And she's getting a burst as well. Her finisher is the self battery into a big split HP attack, and the effect is attack up, overflow up, brave damage, cap up, HP damage plus 20 when the party members party members attacking are higher than their eye brave, which is pretty much always. If you're in the party with Y'shtola, she's gonna be battering you on everything, so you will be higher than your eye brave. So this should be good to go generally. Now her high armor is support. It's not super impactful, and I wouldn't grab this unless you plan to run her a lot. Y'shtola won't spend a lot of time at that cap. I don't see it happening, but that 5% extra attack is okay, but really it's not super big for her, so you can potentially pass on this one. Additionally, Kuja is getting an 80 in LD boards. His LD boards give him party overflow on his overhead, 20% more overflow for the party, and that's it. Yes, that is it. His 80 and the ability to use call abilities are more impactful than his LD boards. These will certainly get reworked later. Kuja's still good regardless. His call ability, regular one, is skill 1. It does damage and drops his imperil AoE. And his LD call is his LD just does damage, but it's very good for co-ops. It's a lot of damage in a short span of time. Awesome. What do I think about this event as a whole? Well, Kuja got pretty much nothing except for the ability to use calls. Feels bad. Can't wait to use that extra overflow on Ultima that never caps. Kuja burst plus waiting room, absolutely. Y'shtola's in an interesting spot. I think she's very clunky on release, and I did not personally like using her in JP. This was not an uncommon opinion on release either. Even the Final Fantasy 14s I know, like Alphino and Infighter, and please correct me if I'm misquoting you guys, but I know you guys weren't quite feeling her. You ran her and stuff, but they weren't quite feeling it until like when she felt smooth when she got Burst Plus. Keep in mind, I say all that, she's plenty usable, but in my opinion, I think she's kind of mid. Her basic Brave Plus sucks, and her burst effect is just okay compared to others. However, she does have that loaded burst plus and LD board rework down the line that pretty much solves her issues. If you get her burst now, you're going to get the double dip later, and in that regard, she's potentially a safe token choice. I might token her personally because I might gem pity Garland, and I might gem pity Bartz. Those are also good pickups as well. So yeah, just keep your eyes open, or your mind open, I should say, for Y'shtola's burst. Am I pulling? Yes, I always go for the 2-week synergy. I'm not burst chasing, but always nice to have. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I pull one. Her LD will be sufficient for challenge quests, and as always, I'll hedge myself if I manage to pull the burst. I'm not getting her high armor because it's largely pointless. She's not going to be hidden cap, and I don't see myself using her much outside of synergy, so it is what it is. But overall, Y'shtola's solid. Not a big fan. I think she's pretty skippable now, but just consider that when she does come back later, she is with Ramuh's LD. And her burst is on the banner, and I forget the third, but if it's just an EX plus unit, who cares anyways. But Ramuh LD is on the other banner, and then it's split between Zidane LD and burst on the other banner, and Beatrix LD also getting LD boards at that point as well. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking skip for later. It might not be the best choice, or maybe it is, who knows. The fight is an interesting one. It's the return of the Deuce Krakens. There's no immunity, so go crazy. Whip back out the Paladin Cecil, so you can use them now. The orb is to heal by 50% of your HP plus 5 per party member. So an AoE heal, it's plus 15. It's not that big of a deal of an orb if you got consistent heals. Thankfully, there's no magic only this time. Melee counters are gone and any other garbage, but they have some different goodies. Now, they gain a ton of Brave after their AoE HPs, so you either gotta cut them down or eat the attack and heal after. The really nasty part is when they drop below, I think it's 80% and 50. They cleanse, they become debuff immune, they frame their turns, and they're immune to break delay. You can't avoid what's coming next. The next attack is a nuke. They do a big Brave gain into hard hitting attacks, and they ignore HP damage reduction. This can be dodged. This can be waited out or tanked by last stand. And the restrictions release after they do this attack. They target whoever has the most HP, and they swap if it changes. Now listen, because this is a bit hard to explain. You have to see it in practice, really. Say A and B have consecutive turns, right? And they're both targeting Celes, who has the highest HP. A blows Celes up, and her health is at 1, and B's turn is immediately after. B will retarget without having taken an action the next highest HP member. So say the next highest HP party member is Y'shtola, and Y'shtola's going to get attacked as well. So double last stand or dodge can get through this. Just make sure your HP passes are allocated correctly. If Gladio's covering everyone and the bosses get back-to-back turns A and B, Gladio will just die because they ignore HP damage reduction. So they'll set Gladio to 1, A will, and they'll target someone else, but Gladio will also cover them. And then they'll punch Gladio and kill him. So just think about how it's all set up. It's possible to get through with him, obviously, but there's some different strategies you can do. It might be possible to revive through it and live as well, but I don't know about that for a fact. Who am I running? JP, I ran Celes, Aerith, and Paladin Cecil, and just ate the attacks with Celes and Aerith, and we just coasted through. In global, I want to run Aerith again because I love using her. So probably her with Y'shtola and a third. Probably Squall, Y'shtola, Squall, Aerith. Yeah, that sounds good. Maybe I'll get spicy and run Gallo just to dodge the attacks, but I don't know. Bunch of options for this fight. Hope you guys enjoy. Serah's LD. Man, if I was petty, I'd play the sad tuba womp 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 in the background right now, or Curb Your Enthusiasm theme. Man, it's gonna try not to be too sarcastic here. Serah, she is not getting a rework. This is all assumptions, assuming they don't change anything in global, which I don't see why they would, but it'd be nice, but I'm not optimistic at all. Her LD, it's a party battery into split AoE, Brave plus HP, just 1 attack. It applies her EX debuff, which she did not have trouble maintaining. Okay, sarcasm, stop. Frame defense down 20% and poison. She gets a new buff. It's a party M-Brave regen. Cool, I guess, in the era of Brave game reduction. Additional M-Brave regen for Serah, based on her M-Brave, which is horrible. And she gets gained overflow up by 20%. She gets attacked from her limit breaks. She gets debuff start with her new EX debuff whenever she comes in battle. So that's cool, I guess. Her call ability is skill 1 and inflicts 50% M-Brave down and poison. Party battery, exciting. And she has debuff start if you max your LD out. So you could double tap on that, and then the LD call puts up the EX debuff again, and the caller gets a whopping 10% M-Brave regen. Whoa. Her high armor is Brave gain armor, which will definitely be impactful for her, especially down the road when it gets reworked. Anyways, what do I think? If it's not fairly obvious. She's a mess. You're only pulling for favoritism if you really pull her. Or just masochism, I don't know. She's a mess. They didn't fix anything. They didn't fix any of her problems, nor did they really add anything new or impactful to her. Even her LD call isn't good. I like Serah, but I don't know what they were smoking here. Hats off to anyone committed to running her. You're doing God's work. Show us how valuable she is. Show us how viable she is. I'll enjoy watching your videos, but I won't be pulling myself. She might get a burst later down the road and get a full makeover, but for now, she's in the dirt. I'd rather pull on that banner where she gets upgraded than this one. If you need a sap character, Trey is the literal next banner, and he's actually really good. If they do tweak her release in Global, I'd be pleasantly surprised, but I wouldn't bank on it. Am I pulling? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If they build her, I mean, I'll build her if I get the LD on the... Is there a free pull? I actually don't even know that. If there's a free pull, if I free pull her LD, I'll build her. Otherwise, this banner could just go die. If they adjust her, I'll be jumping on the train and giving my analysis like I always do with shakeups, and I'll probably pull at that point too. So stay tuned for that. There's no fight coming with it, probably. I don't know, unless they throw a Serah specific abyss along with some other Serah related things, but I'm really not optimistic at all. There's nothing attached to her, but she is boosted on his Tola's fight and Trey's Lost Chapter, so she could be helpful in Trey's Lost Chapter with the Sap Orb. But other than that, I'm so sorry, Serah, but you are currently the meme. Trey's Lost Chapter. I'm excited for this one. Trey, he's not getting a rework, but he did not need it. He already had an amazing kit. His LD is 4 uses. It's a single target, range, triple, brave plus HP with a refund in between with 50% splash at the end. Whew, clean. He smacks you with his bow. His limit breaks give him more attack, and he drops a new trap debuff. Yes, another debuff. Oh boy, debuffs. Man, anyways, he gets the debuff has brave damage up plus 20 and a 10% M brave sap. It helps everything Trey does, and he hits harder as well. The trap is a brave gain into a double brave plus HP and it refunds Trey afterwards. His call ability, skill 2, AoE trap effect that goes off after 2 turns, and his LD call does his LD attack and drops his trap debuff. Pocket brave damage up, which is nice, and okay off turn damage. His high armor is attack, which is pretty good for him. He can cap relatively easy in the right team. Not super necessary, but nice to have with the right setup. Overall, definitely a good upgrade. For me, Trey is the most exciting unit of the month. I think he was severely underrated on his ES release, and even more so now. I personally used him in JP as far as Aranea's Lost Chapter and Transcendence 4. His utility is insane. Man, 40% brave damage up with his 2 debuffs combined, tons of off-turn damage, party battery, non-elemental, so he can be enchanted, only 2 debuff slots, no party buffs. He enables the rest of the party to instant break. I also just love archer characters in general, and he's my favorite unit from Type 0, even if that actual game is trash. Type 0 fans are tend to be weird sometimes, so I disown every one of y'all. I'm kidding, not really, but Trey's awesome. Man, I am definitely pulling, absolutely. I encourage everyone to do so as well. Trey is just really good. He's just not super flashy. Off-turn damage is king for boss rush, and more of those characters are always welcome. If you can tick up an orb on the off turn, that's super helpful for orb control as well. And I love the off turn playstyle of things anyways. Varying Gladio Trey is a pretty silly combo. Plus, how can you resist smacking someone in the face with a bow? Just wham! It's too cool, man. Trey does come back with you and his LD on the same banner, but he's largely out of his prime by then if you're on the fence. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about skipping for later. As for the fight, the stupid cats are back with a vengeance. If you were around for Trey's event, the Chaos, this fight is still just as stupid largely. It's immune to attack down, generic attack down, generic defense down, generic sap, and it absorbs Holy and Wind, so Cecil, sorry. Wind was random, maybe they wanted to discourage the launch comps with Pandemonium Summon, I don't know, but it still happens anyways. They still do the thing where they go insane and insta-break you, plus delaying you with guaranteed hits, and they have high turn rate. The difference now, though, is that we have a Gladio who can take those delays and counter near indefinitely. So as long as you get some sort of sap up, Gladio can handle this fight pretty well. They cleanse a ton of generics, which is very obnoxious. It's also possible to launch meta this one down. Just know Pandemonium Summon will get absorbed unless you're enchanted or something, or unless you're working around it. If these options aren't available to you, try whatever off-turn shenanigans you can. Sellers, X-Death should be a beast here, Emperor, and they need to be broken when they turn yellow, otherwise you do ones and you might get blown up, so be careful of that. I think this one can be Eald'Narche again too. Eald'Narche was the popular unit of Cheese back in the day. Squall should just flat out murder them because he's got insane damage. Just make sure that you don't die, and he should be good. Who am I running? In JP, I ran Celes, Furion, and Trey for the triple off-turn Wombo combo. Now I'm thinking Trey, Aerith, and Gladio. Should be plenty. Gladio and Trey in the off-turns, Aerith with the defense down and the speed down to get some control on the bosses. should be smooth. Maybe I might want to do an Arciela run or see whatever I can mess around with her. But yeah, I want to see where I can get creative in this fight. I'm curious to see what everyone else will do too. And to close out the month, we have Boss Rush 3. The new character, well, not the new character, but the featured character here is Wakka. He is not getting a rework, but he is getting an LD. It's got 4 uses, and it's a 100% AoE attack, and he gets a free skill after use. He drops an RNG debuff for 6 turns. The cornerstone of this debuff is that it always has brave damage up plus 20, which is nice, but the rest of it is RNG. It has a 1 out of 3 chance to be one of 3 debuffs. Should have been self-sufficient there, whatever. The stat 1 has attack, defense, eye brave, and brave down, plus minus 50%, which is hilarious. Freeze works like Setzer. Their brave cannot increase even if they attack you. The brave attack, or they do a brave gain, their brave will not increase. And the paralyzed one stuns them. It will become one or the other randomly upon application and will subsequently change after the boss attacks. And he gets attack from his limit breaks. His call ability, you already had this, 80% up to attack, defense, and brave for the caller. And his LD call is 2 turns of his LD debuff, which can be RNG. It is RNG, and it can be great if RNG is willing, though. At worst, it's a 2-turn brave damage up debuff. At best, you're going to get to abuse that 50% defense down as well, which is actually, Jack's debuff is what? 20%, 30% brave damage up, 50% defense down, or do I have that backwards? Anyways, potentially a very powerful debuff, but obviously you don't want to rely on it because it could not go the way you wanted to. What do I think about Wakka? Well, I planned to skip him in JP, and I got him on the free pull, so I built him, and I used his LD in the boss rush, and I didn't touch him again. I don't like the RNG of his debuffs. His EX is fine with the random application because it's up so fast, so everyone will generally have it, but the debuffs can... Yeah, I just don't like it. Not my playstyle. I was never a big fan of playing Wakka in the first place because the blinds. His kid always. He's good. He's a very good character. He provides good party buffs. He was just never my vibe. He's got stellar party buffs. It's very workable in teams. Plenty of runs with him. Plenty viable. But the debuffs are just not reliable outside of the 20% brave damage up, and I don't really feel like going for it. But I saw this good. He's definitely a good pickup. Free skill helps his longevity, although he was mostly skill spamming regardless. And he should be hitting harder now as well just because of his additional limit breaks and the brave damage up from the debuff. And I'm not too fond of his base kit with his LD slapped on, so yeah, not really my thing. But I think he's definitely a solid character. They gave him a good upgrade. Am I pulling? No. Like I said, I'll never use him. Just being real, I never did in a JP. I have no attachment to the character outside of just Albed memes. Now he does come back with Setzer, who I know most of you have on your radar as an overpowered LD, so he might be collateral down the road if you decide to skip now. But again, by that point, he's largely out of his prime, and you just be doing so for collection purposes, or maybe that boss rush, maybe. But yeah, if you want to use Wakka, this is the time to use him. I always say that. As for the fight, this was the first boss rune tuned. This is going to be the first boss rush that was tuned like it was in JP. And by that I mean it was balanced around party synergy being a thing. Same tips as usual in boss rush to try and spread out your boosted units across each party to hit as hard as possible. Try to bring a burst in each party as well, and spam skills like there's no tomorrow, because there is no tomorrow. Everything in this boss rush is immune to imperils as well, so keep that in mind. Wave 1 is a sap/poison orb, same as Trey's. This is the fight that got copy-pasted into Vincent's Abyss, minus the Imperil immunity. The beetles, they're the Rosa beetles, they are obnoxious. This wave is to sell Trey. You want to off-turn the hell out of this one. It needs to act anyways for the orb to go down. If you get broken, you'll probably just die, so try not to do that. Vincent's attack and eye brave down should help against that. He's not fettered by element debuffs once he gets his EX going, so maybe he might be solid here. X death should be great too. Mostly, you probably want to run Gladio here, because he won't be getting broken by the beetles, and they'll be protecting everyone countering. Again, off-turn damage. Dump your Gladio here. Trey, if you have him, great here, but lots of options for this first wave. Just make sure that you can fulfill the orb, and you should be fine. Wave 2, it's a heal orb. It's the same as the Y'shtola one, and they're trying to sell her here, obviously, and this is where you want to use her. When they drop below 80 and 50% health, they cleanse, and they do a fat brave gain, and they cleanse all their debuffs. I think they wanted you to carry Trey over from the last wave, or maybe tank the attack. I don't know. It's easy to get caught off guard here and get blown up, but it is manageable. And this is the Guard Scorpions boss, so it's kind of like the Cloud one, but not really, because they don't have the paralyzed condition. Anyways, this wave is also completely unlaunchable, but you can delay them. Just know that they do have that threshold gain, and just as long as you hit the orb and you heal, it should be good here too. Wave 3, there is no orb. This is the filler wave. It's the Leon bosses. And they do the attack where they blow you up the first turn they get, and then it's generally smooth sailing from there. They do the thing where they cleanse and they give themselves a bunch of buffs, but largely this shouldn't be that big of a deal. Again, this wave is largely filler. And then the fourth wave is a new boss, the Needle Snake. The orb goes +2 when the boss has 2 or more debuffs active. So if they got 2 or more debuffs active and you take a turn, then the orb will just sit there and increase until the max at 20. It'll just not change. They are ice weak and melee resist. They are also unlaunchable. There's a few tricks here, unfortunately. Oh boy. If they get more than 3 debuffs or 4 or more debuffs active, they're going to get very unhappy. And they're going to cleanse and they're going to buff themselves invisibly. They're going to be really hard to knock down. So you really don't ever want to go above 3 debuffs on them until like maybe the end. I think it's threshold based. Don't quote me. At least 3 times I think they'll get their overhead with stacks that they get thicker. They get HP poison aura, and they have reduced HP damage taken, which is very annoying. The only way to decrease the overhead stacks is to break them. And they do a big brave gain that makes them recover from break after party member takes a turn, which makes it a bit more accessible to break them, but you need to cut them down or else you're going to have to deal with those overhead stacks. And once the overhead stacks are gone, then it's smooth sailing again. As long as you don't go crazy with debuffs, remember to heal near the end. This should be fine. It's selling Wakka because his RNG debuffs actually counter everything they do. The no brave gain debuff makes them easier to break in between their thresholds, and the paralysis just makes them straight up harmless, and the stat down counters the overhead. It actually, I think it directly, whatever stats they buff on the overhead, I think Wakka's debuffs just straight up cancels it out. And when they don't even have that up, they're even weaker, which is pretty good. Bringing Onion Knight or Sellers will allow you to use melee units because they have the enchant on them. Setters, Freeze can work in place of Wakka either in the party to give synergy stats or as a call ability. Otherwise, just blow these guys up using normal boss rush and Infinity Tactics and you should be good. Who am I running? I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking wave 1, I'm going to do Paladin Cecil Burst, Gladio, and Trey to boost my synergy stats. Party 2 will be Aerith, Furian's Burst, and Ishtola to boost the synergy stats, and party 3 will be Squall's Burst, Onion Knight for the enchant, and Setzer to give us a synergy boost. Should be smooth sailing, and I'll be recording it when it comes out. Should be fine. I hope you guys also enjoy. And that is it. Closing thoughts. This was an interesting month. Not the highest, but whatever. Quality of life made it a W overall. My pull plans for the month are Serah LD, Aerith LD, Eald'Narche LD, Ishtola LD, and Trey's LD. I'm most excited for Trey's LD because I find him extremely fun. All the off-turn damage and the arrow stuff, yeah, it's right up my alley. And that's it. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, share this around, drop a comment about your plans, and again, I read all the comments. So shout anything you want to, I got you. Thanks for watching, guys. Good luck on your polls throughout the month, and I'll catch you later, alright? Peace.